Yo, what is going on, everybody? Isaac Mashman here. Welcome back to another episode of Chase the Vision with Isaac Mashman, the show that is all about helping you become a more capable individual through sharing personal development, my experiences, and now the experiences and the knowledge of other people. And today I have a really awesome guest on, Matt Devine. Now, I don't really know how to make an introduction for this guy because he is the lead singer of Kill Hannah. He launched that band way back before I was even born, I think. And then from there, he just has had an amazing career. He's done a lot of different things, published books, traveled the world on tour. And then aside from that, he's the head of music partnerships at Cameo, that awesome app where you basically pay celebrities, get shout outs, allows you to really connect with them one-on-one. And reached out to him. I was like, Matt, it'd be an honor to have you on the show, share your experiences, talk about Cameo, talk about, some of the early, days. And here he is. Matt, what's going on, man?
What's up, brother? Love that intro. I've been hosting a few regular Clubhouse rooms and panels. I just slaughter intros. Like 10 talking points, and I remember two of them, fumble through it and kind of force them to fill in some of the gaps. In this case, I think you pretty much nailed it.
All right, podcast done. See you later. No, it's good. All right, man. Well, hey, there's no firm, I guess you could say, way for us to do this. Let's just have a conversation. But man, I would love for you to introduce yourself and really start from the beginning. When I was doing a little bit of research and kind of finding out more about Matt Devine, I didn't see a lot about like your background when it comes to the family you were raised in and anything like that. And for me personally, and from what I've seen, a lot of people's success and the way that they grow up, the way that they turn out, and the paths that they pursue is influenced based off of the parents and the household that they were born in. So how was your childhood coming up?
Cool. Yeah. And I'd say for any of your listeners who is curious, if you want real entertainment, it might be tougher to find these days, but yeah, try to find a Kill Hannah interview from me in my late 20s. It's pure gold. And I can only kind of laugh about it third person from my perspective now, because I'm like, okay, I feel like I've completely reinvented myself since that time and since those 2 decades. So I can kind of reappreciate it myself, but yeah, I would say and actually hang on a second, I don't know how to turn off this. I have it on do not disturb. Why did it still make I
have faith in you.
Cool, we got this.
There we go.
Tech company and major label artists. I think we should, between the two of us here and a thriving podcast producer and host, I think we can handle muting text messages.
fingers crossed.
but yeah, and by the way, I'm interested in the same stuff. The more I kind of dig into nature, nurture, and just how people are, who they are, and where they continue to grow or not grow, and just the general journeys that people find themselves on. The more I observe and the more I've experienced, the more curious I get about this exact topic. So when it comes to me, yeah, I was raised in Norwalk and Westport, Connecticut, actually, and it was I had a really privileged upbringing. I was really tight with my family. Dad worked in New York City. Spent childhood in Connecticut, moved around a little bit, moved to a suburb of New York City called Nyack on the Hudson River, and then from there to Chicago. And my parents eventually moved back. They didn't like the Midwest as much. They're in New Hampshire now. So virtually my entire extended family is all New England. But I stayed in Chicago, finished up high school there at Lake Forest High School. Which is funny enough because I now have a couple coworkers that also graduated from LFHS, and we were laughing about some of the notable peeps that came from, like Vince Vaughn and whoever else who was like Mr. T and John Hughes, and who were the big names in Lake Forest that we were bonding over. But yeah, from there, so I went to the School of the Art Institute in Chicago and pretty much formed the band Kill Hannah in Chicago, which was very, very difficult and brutal and thankless, and it's a sort of you know, what we had to do in the early days of Kill Hannah to cut through the noise, and I would never do again. And I, you know, I think about it a lot because it was totally insane to do what we did. It was, I mean, you're looking at starting a band, and the goal was to sign to a major label. That was the goal from the beginning. And I thought, when, you know, when I really connected with writing, with songwriting and with producing and forming the band, and when I realized that it was 10 years pretty much from the day that I committed heart and soul to, I want to be a rock star. That's it. Like, it's the only thing that really gets me off this way. It's the perfect forum for all my various ADD interests. From art school, I get to design a logo, I get to work on t-shirts, I get to, you know, I get to sing about, you know, the sort of dramatic themes of my own favorite bands, and kind of beginning, just try to come close to contributing something to the conversation of music that would resonate with other people, the way Jane's Addiction and Smashing Pumpkins and The Cure and the Smiths and all those artists resonated with me and my friends. So interestingly, also, this is obviously ancient history, so this is pre-internet. So a band trying to break out of Chicago in the 90s, I mean, it was just hell. It was, I don't know how masochistic we must have been, but you're talking about also a scene that did not suffer pretension, and it was, you know, the artists out of Chicago that were, first of all, there was no music industry in Chicago. It was about, you know, Italian beef restaurants and baseball franchises and the rest, but there were not a single major label had an office in Chicago. It was like it was impossible to get any A&R from the coast to fly in to see a show. There's the artists that were beloved and supported by the community in those days were, for the most part, real super cred, these like seminal indie artists that were, you know, they kind of defined what later was kind of like the whole Pitchfork scene, you know, and we, even though I, you know, had a ton of overlap socially with that scene, and I even interned at Brad Wood's studio and worked on some of those like really amazing records. Well, I didn't work on them. I vacuumed in the studio with those. You
got a part of the process. You made sure the studio looked great for everybody.
Occasionally, yeah, they let me tinker with the tape and stuff, but no, I was in proximity to some pretty important records. But no, our band was very polarizing. We made a stance early on that we wanted to have an image that was kind of larger than life, and my heroes were all rock stars that were, you know, were essentially aliens that came from another, you know, just another solar system. So that's who I idolize, and that's what I want. I want to create that distinction between who's on stage and who isn't. And that was super taboo to do in Chicago. So that's just paint a little richer of a picture to describe just what an uphill, impossible battle we had ahead of us, which was, okay, you want to do something kind of glitzy and glammy and cool and catchy and create a scene. Emo did not exist. That word was not around. But we were sort of, you know, we were flat ironing our hair and we were wearing.
Saw the hair, yeah. I've seen some pictures.
But that's just, I just love the Cure. So we were more, yeah, we're going for the kind of Susie and the Banshees and Depeche Mode and Cure stuff. But it took root. It took a long time. It took a long time playing horrible shows and, you know, schlepping your amps up a frozen staircase in an alleyway to get to a practice space, to pay $30 an hour just to sound like garbage, and, you know, to have a band member leave. And, you know, we had a lot of rotation of band members in those early years until it got solid. Our songs started getting a little better. We started getting a little more professional. When we were headlining, by the time, you know, I started, you know, Metro at that time, the Chicago Metro is like the temple to cool music in Chicago. And I was just, I mean, that's where we saw Smashing Pumpkins and everyone else. And when we wanted to, we set that as a real North Star for us, like one day we're going to headline the Metro. And it started by, they're giving us Monday afternoon slots for $2 shows, but you've got to bring 100 people to pay or you'll never be asked back. And so we just became promotion machines. We just became like street team hustlers. Like we didn't even know what a street team was. We just knew that we're collecting email addresses one at a time, handwritten.
Wow.
We had all the relationships with all the record stores in town where, we'd ask them to hang up our posters and our flyers, and we'd go out of pocket to print flyers. And we made CDs that we humiliated ourselves. Like you're talking about, like waiting in the snow on a random corner in Chicago to talk to a stranger, to give them a flyer to come to your show, go through your phone book one by one and call every single person that and beg them to come. Usually it would just be my sister and whoever she could drag from work.
But that dedication right there actually paid off in the end, because I mean, not to spend too much time talking about Kill Hannah, because obviously that was 20 years ago. I mean, the band disbanded. You guys broke up in 2015 and kind of said like, hey, this is the last show. It's on to, our separate pathways, which I do, potentially want to talk about in a couple of minutes. But you guys did have some massive success, from the numbers that I was reading in my research, 200,000 album sales combined. You guys had a tour in Europe. You guys went, all around, toured in Chicago, performed there, obviously. And, right now, Kill Hannah is still averaging like 40,000 monthly listeners on Spotify, which is more than a lot of other artists. And that's really, really cool. There's one moment that I do want to talk about is the tour bus caught on fire in Switzerland.
Yeah.
What was that?
Yeah. So the sort of happy ending to that long drawn out, and I apologize, answer to the last question is that we ultimately did get to a point where we were, we were known in Chicago, loved or hated, we were known. And we were selling out Metro every couple months at full ticket price to kids who were dressed like us, screaming every word. And it was a beautiful time. It was insanely frustrating to play a sold out show. And then, with your gear, I didn't even have a car. My bass player had a car. His keyboard is sticking out of the window, amps, multiple trips in a Honda Civic just to get the gear to and from the show. In the snow with people laughing at us, but we ultimately did mercifully, we signed with Atlantic Records in 2003, and that was a major milestone and accomplishment. And and that led to essentially the next 10 years of my life, which was being on the road, putting out records and going through album cycles, a couple with Atlantic, Roadrunner, Motown, and by the way, to your point about all of that there being a purpose to that struggle, like for real, and it'll tie back into your question about the fire. Nothing, by the time we signed our deal, we had been through so much. Like we lost a drummer, died. I can't tell you how many close calls with heartbreaks of deal offers that were on the table that were flown to LA last second to go perform from the president of Colombia, whatever the hell. Every showcase, every promise of every music convention that we were part of, every single time, and the cool thing about that though is that the band members who stuck it out with me were like brothers. We still are. And we only think we have zero. We just trained ourselves to not spend a second of time indulging in like the misfortune. Like we just go into problem solving. We're just problem solve. So we're on tour in Europe, and it was a great tour. We were headlining. There's a band called My Passion that were on the tour bus with us, and we were it was rad. And we're coming from we're in a double decker bus with like 16 people sleeping on it. We had a couple of our girlfriends that were out on the road, which is hilarious because this is their only tour experience. But we were we're coming from Italy up through the Italian Alps on the way to I think on the way to Paris. And I just wake up, it's 8:30 in the morning, everyone get out of the bus. and we get out, in whatever we're wearing, no shoes, no laptops, no anything, get out, and we look back and the entire bus is on fire. And all we could do is pretty much stand there on the side of the highway with like these and just watch the fire grow until it pretty much burned the bus down to the frame. And we didn't have any. It's funny because we have some footage of that day, and there's just no reactions, and even the girlfriends were like, we were taking pictures, like, how could you possibly take a picture? I'm like, this is barely remarkable for the shit that we've had to suffer through, like
Right.
at least it's nice. We end up staying in this but again, problem solving. We're like, okay, who has passports? Who needs new passports? Who needs to go to the consulate? Who needs to take a train into Zurich? Who's gonna book us a hotel in this little whatever weird little snowboarding town in the mountain that we're in right now? But yeah, silver lining, kicked it for a couple of days. I think we only missed one show, and we ended up just drinking every drop of alcohol in this tiny bar in this tiny town. And also this town only had one store that sold shoes, so every one of us were wearing the same like size 12 Adidas track shoes that were gray. That's really, and we just ate spaghetti and drank for like 2 days straight. And then
Yeah, I mean, at least you were in France. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not a bad country to be trapped in.
yeah, it was charming. And if I ever hear myself complaining about, or back then, about things that are just, you're so lucky, it's just such like major label band problems, it's so easy for me to check back in with that dude that would have murdered his parents to get a major label deal, so I mean,
Right.
in those days also, while we were playing all those shows and trying to get a foothold and cut through the noise, we're also just like, I can't tell you how possessed I was with the idea. Like every time I saw Shooting Star, I'm like, we need to sign to a major label. Every time I pass a fountain, throw a penny in, I want to be on a major label. Every time I pass a church, light a candle, I got to be on a major label. So interesting takeaways there. And then really kind of pretty clear parallels between that whole, just that crusade we were on back then, and then what's gone on with Cameo in the last few years since I came
Right.
on. It's pretty interesting.
And what you're describing is a large part why I didn't decide to pursue the music industry, because I saw that there was like literally only one way that you could ever make it, and that's going all in, sacrificing. And then even then, at the end of the day, when it comes to a label perspective, there's no way for the artist to win and the label to win. Like it's either like one or the other. It's very rare to find that balance. But the other side of things is that whole tour life probably was the best time of your life, not knowing where you would sleep, or it's the same equivalent of, being an entrepreneur and a businessman and catching a flight out and not knowing where you're staying that night or what's happening. And that's like the best time. And that risk taking is what a lot of people can learn from, because I've been talking to some people lately and they're just like, I'm afraid of taking the risk. I don't know. I'm afraid. And I'm like, you just got to make the decision and jump, and you just have to make up your mind. Now there's some definitely interesting things, especially coming from how you use the word privileged family, yet coming and becoming this like anti-hero, like culture thing of setting a band that, I mean, I was researching how the band was named and all that other stuff. And it's like, you're the complete opposite of how you were raised in that regard. But at the end of the day, I think that you did what a lot of artists should learn from you and do. And that's, you leverage that success and you leverage those experiences and that knowledge. And even though you decided to get out of music at the end of the day, you still use that to land a career and to land something that is relatively big, head of partnerships or head of music partnerships at Cameo, which is valued at just recently $1 billion company, which is huge. So how did that process go? Like, I know that you came out, Kill Hannah disbanded in 2015, and you did your solo project in 2014 underneath the pseudonym of Wrongchilde. And I didn't realize that you hit 500,000 monthly listeners on Spotify at one point, and you just kind of said that I'm done with this and took a step back. How did those couple of years go?
I mean, it was unpleasant, to be honest. There's to your point, I mean, a couple of things. One, privilege is tricky because ultimately, I guess what I mean it's really what I mean there is like I had a super supportive family, and so even though they didn't have a single even like tangential favor they could pull in the music industry. Like, my dad was in textbook publishing, my mom taught at my tiny little Catholic school. So, on the spectrum, I'd say like pretty humble and pretty like rural, but what they did give me was a sense that like they just had my back. And I think knowing
Okay.
that they had my back, I didn't even know that what I was doing was taking a risk. Like when I was 17, 18, and I said, I'm going all in, it's like you're going to get a deal and have a career in music, or you're going to die trying. Like I wasn't even, that's not even hyperbole. I was straight up. I was like, I'll kill myself if it doesn't work. It's, no big deal.
Yeah.
That's what I felt. And I was also, I'd been reading Oscar Wilde, and I've been reading, like, my heroes back then were all the most sort of melodramatic and romantic. And so, I was always just hungry for anything that was remarkable and cool and maybe European or rare or hedonistic or whatever it was. And so it was a little bit of a retaliation against, I found Chicago and Illinois and the Midwest in general to be just so kind of sleepy and provincial. And I saw myself in New York. I was like, how am I not Chloe Sevigny's best friend? That was the thought that was going through my head in my 20s, like, why am I here? And I started to embrace Chicago, and we started to turn around and say, okay, we're not stuck in Chicago. Like, we love Chicago. We fucking rep Chicago. We are Chicago. Like, it's cold, it's evil, it's poetic, it's dramatic. You've got basically the lake, it's as big as an ocean, and you got nonstop cloud cover, and you're surrounded by alcoholics and drug addicts, and
came to embrace that.
Yeah. But yeah, but that transition though, so where I'm going with that is, in order to succeed in art, I believe you have to burn the boats. You can't hedge your bets. You can't have a backup plan. And so I think there were some people, the reason why I think people wrestle with risk is a couple of things. One, they're probably smarter than I was. I didn't know what the risk was. When I say it was like success or death, my version of death was even kind of cool. It's like, all right, I'll either be on MTV, or I imagine myself in whatever, Switzerland, I don't know, fishing on an island or whatever.
That is hilarious, because I actually have a very similar approach. Like I've been to that point where I'm like, I'm either going all in with business, or I'm just going to wind up a monk. Like I'm going to Taiwan or Vietnam, and I'm just going to be a monk for the rest of my life. Like there's all in or all out. And that right there, it's not just about arts, but it's about, I think, anything in life, to hit the big leagues to the degree that a lot of people aspire, say that they want to be at. Like it is burn the boats. It is burn the ships.
Totally. And I'll tell you though, what that led to was a death of a different kind. So truly it was laser, just absolutely possessed and focused with that goal for that period of time. And then when I got it, so you're talking about 10 years just to get to that point, then you're at the dance. Now it's a whole new mountain to climb. Now it's like, okay, cool. We made a splash in Chicago. Are we gonna resonate out there in the rest of the world? Can we sustain this thing? Like all the other challenges that come into play, all the stakes get higher. Also you have guys it's kind of an arms race between the success of the band and then the sort of individual journeys of the band members. You have a guy that's maybe 34, and maybe he doesn't share the same psychotic vision that I do. Maybe for him a house in the burbs and a simple life is preferable. So it was all that. But where I was going with that is my mentality behind all that, and it's great to learn later that I have been recognized for the hustle. People saw it and they're like, this dude definitely believes in what he's talking about. Like, good or bad. Like, I don't think I think they would say about me back then, like, that kid, I don't think he has perspective, but he certainly has no issues in the sort of like exaggerated sense of his own importance, you know, but
Yeah.
which was contagious in a good way. But it was also foundationally, it was very youth oriented. Like I was very Peter Pan. I was, you know, of course, just the nature of music and entertainment itself is youth driven, and I was, you know, we're competing against artists that are 18, 22 years old who are writing songs about themes that matter more to, you know, kind of coming of age themes and this. And so I found myself now coming out, you know, going into my late 30s and 40, not feeling real anymore. That okay, I'm not going to put on tight jeans and eyeliner as a 40-year-old. I'm just not going to do it. And it's also just the business of it is ludicrous,
Mm.
absolutely ludicrous. So there's a point that my kind of final close the chapter moment was very clear. Actually, I was standing where it was with Wrongchilde, you know, and that solo record was great. You know, I had a duet with Gerard Way from My Chemical Romance, and some great videos and a really cool press push, and it kind of, you know, it got out there. But then you're looking at the cycle of an album, and you're talking about touring, and you know, I just finally, I think, came to terms with the stark, bleak reality of how costly it is to tour, what investment it is. And you know, I'm talking about, I could not possibly ask my bandmates to quit their bartending jobs where they're making $1,000 a night to go in a van, you know, to
And
travel
tour, yeah.
to tour again to places where there may not even be a big crowd. And for what? Like to hopefully impress someone else who may take a chance and invest in a, it just, I saw it, and it was the first time in my life that I felt like not failing. I failed all the time, but where my dream was dashed, where finally I'm like, this dream is over. Like the runway, I'm out of runway, and I didn't get there. You know, I got somewhere. I was really proud of where we got, and it's really 1 in a million what we achieved, and to tour and to pull up in other countries where people are wearing your shirts and dress like you, and you know, you're cool. That's that in itself is a success, but it was certainly it was short of what the real dream was. So you know, coming to terms with that at 40 is tough. It's a long answer to your question, but it's tough. It's not pleasant, you know,
Mhm.
like and it's an ego death, and it's not, it wasn't a death like I imagined but it was a death. It was really a who the hell am I existential identity crisis. Now I'm,
Symbolic death,
yeah,
so to
truly.
speak. Yeah.
And but with real with actual symptoms though. Do you know what I mean? Like suddenly you get anxiety, suddenly you get insomnia, suddenly your body starts going to shit, suddenly you get brain fog, you don't have your humor, you don't have your wit, you don't have, or whatever you thought you did once have. But it's a collapse of everything. And then you start seeing yourself not instead of seniors. I always saw myself and I think this is good, but I always saw myself as worthy of being in the room with anybody. I always saw myself as like an
Mhm.
asset to a conversation. So I never shied from, you know, I was invited once to this dinner in a castle in Central Park with nothing but like heirs of the biggest fortunes in all of America. And I didn't think that I shouldn't be there. The truth is I was broke. The truth is I was in New York because I was, you know, the play I was in, the Spider-Man Broadway
Spider-Man, yeah.
had wrapped, and I was just still in New York kind of writing blogs and kicking it. But I was like, of course I should be here. Of course I should be talking to Elon Musk. Of course I should be. Really, that confidence was kind of divorced from the reality, you know. But I couldn't really feel that anymore. So I saw myself instead as like the worst version of myself. Instead, my whole self-confidence was gone, and my esteem. Instead, I saw myself as, holy shit, dude, you are now a middle-aged guy that was once in a band. That's all. That's it. And that's sad. And that's really unattractive. And I, spare people, having to talk to you. So I started like avoiding people. I started kind of living from a place of fear while I was figuring things out, and it wasn't, I don't think it was outwardly obvious. Like I was still, still having sort of conversations, making plans, still, started managing artists. I started just kind of feeling
it just wasn't the same though.
No, and the thing is, I just didn't have the purpose. So at least the thing is that drove me, and I think a lot of other people can relate, is that without purpose, it's just everything else kind of suffers. So when at least I knew in my heart, I'm going to be on stage one day. I'm going to be a singer of this band. Nothing's going to stop me. I'll move mountains to make this happen. And I was on my purpose 24/7. Now I was like, well, what am I gonna do? Am I gonna work at a label? I don't even know what the hell I'm supposed to do on earth anymore. Like what am I bringing to the table? And so that took a minute. Long answer to your question, it took a minute. At first I felt phony. I was like, all right, I'm gonna manage artists, I'm gonna be an industry dude, but it didn't feel like me. And until I started managing a couple artists, and then I became that guy feeling as much pride in their success as in my own. And that cliche of the dude standing on the side of the stage with the arms folded, kind of nodding. That was me. And I was like, oh, actually, this feels good. I think this is where I belong. All right. And then that led a little bit of confidence, and you kind of claw your way out of the basement, and then your mojo comes back a little bit, and then you have small wins, and then all of that again, but it's just paying your dues, man. And the reason why it's so tricky is that you feeling I think rightly entitled to not have to climb another mountain from the bottom again, when you've gotten to the top of, or at least closer to the top of one mountain, and how just the blood, sweat, and tears that it took to get there. You feel like, all right, I deserve a lateral move. I don't think I should need to start at the bottom of the next mountain. But you really do, and it's good for you to do it, and it's humbling, and all of that struggle informs everything that I do right now. Just as all the early struggle of Kill Hannah and scrapping it out in the winters of Chicago informed everything that we did in that band.
Well, I think based off of the way that you act, man, you've actually come to embrace it, because I'll text you and you'll like text back within a couple of minutes normally. Like I imagine you're always doing something. And that just mentality of never being too, for example, if you own an office or a company, never being too big to take out the trash or to sweep the floor. If you see a mess, you're going to clean it up. And so I think that experience probably humbled you to a degree, and just that persistence, man. Like this interview is going to lead to a documentary about your life in the future, because the more I hear about your story, though, it really is interesting, because Cameo, the direction that's going, you're a part of that machine, you're a part of that vehicle now, and you're still making moves with the company now that you're outside of the musical career. Now, I do have to ask this question. Now, this might be a little bit far out there, but do you ever think that you and the rest of the guys from Kill Hannah will do a concert together again? Or is that chapter completely
probably
closed?
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's funny with the burn the boats metaphor, but that was true. That's true in the startup culture too, obviously. And when I'd actually worked for a bit for a couple other startups that didn't go the distance, and which is common. And but truly the tempo of Cameo, things were growing so fast, and everyone saw it for the rare opportunity that it is. It just did not allow for anything else. You cannot have a side hustle. You cannot possibly pull off, a real career at Cameo and also in the back of your mind trying to be managing other artists or trying to be thinking about putting out another record, you know. That said, we do, you know, so I never want to go on a big tour again. I never want to go through it like a full traditional album cycle and all the rest, but I'll always be writing music, and I'm always you know, I'm so close with the guys. Our chat has never slowed down, and
That's
we
cool.
like shoot little ideas to each other. So yeah, of course, I believe, I assume we'll play again at some point. No one wants to dedicate what it would take to really revitalize it in a way that matters, and that I think really has a shot to really compete in the marketplace of music. But the cool thing is here, you know, that's exactly what we are. That's exactly what I'm fighting for at Cameo, is to disrupt that industry, to give new artists tools to build their fan bases, to sort of shorten that, maybe some of that suffering a little bit, and to extend their runway, so that, you know, it might take, I mean, the most tragic thing to me is the concept of other Matt Devines out there, or whoever, like reaching the end of their runway and saying, shit, I'm broke, I guess I'll have to stop making music, you know. And I think that's a loss for the world, not just for that individual. So
Absolutely.
that's really what energizes me here. And thankfully it's cool to see that a lot of those concepts have materialized. So I have a lot of examples here where the money that the artists are earning here is literally saving, it's saving their bands, it's saving their marriages, it's doing good, you know. It's really gratifying. And then, you know, to see the labels and the old school and the agencies, and that sort of old paradigm all kind of scrambling because they feel super threatened that here's a, you know, we're kind of at the vanguard of where things are going, and we're impacting change in big ways and shaking things up. And it's nice to be energetically to be on the side of the sort of Roman army that is growing, and, you know, and then it is to be the sort of you know, at a label whose entire, you know, who, by the way, missed the boat on every big evolutionary step in the music industry, you know. So this shouldn't be any different, but it feels good. And I don't have a ton of sympathy for anyone in the industry who suddenly now is panicking after spending like 20 years getting paid 6 figures to do jack shit. So
Exactly.
you know,
well, I think that's interesting, not to cut you off, but to talk about there's this concept called the halo effect. And it's like a lot of times people base their assumption on an individual off of one personality trait or off of one thing. And there's, in order to be a celebrity, you know, there's a psychological effect that has to take place with a fan or a follower and another individual, to where they view this person as like greater than thou or greater than themselves. And now I'm not here to dispute or say that that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I imagine you saw that on tour, man, being on stage and having 10,000 people shout your name or shout the band's name and singing along. And so with Cameo now, though, and I imagine this is where the labels kind of get a little pissy and a little bit scared and concerned, is these artists that would normally be completely out of touch with reality of their fans are now able to just make a quick shout out video and be like, hey, Jessica, you know, your boyfriend loves you, you know, something simple like that. And it's like, now the labels don't know what to do.
Yeah. And I mean, it's both of those things. I think they could look, if I'm the head of a label and the writing's on the wall, I think there's a fair argument to be made around more so what is an artist, or what is the distinction between an artist and a fan? How important is that sort of divide? And are we in embracing this new, you know, the new world of accessibility? Is it coming at the cost of maybe something that's, you know, that we'll miss? I think that's an interesting conversation, but certainly financially, that's a really weak argument, because these artists are making more money in a week on Cameo than they make in a year from royalties.
Oh, really? That's
Yeah,
even okay.
yeah. So and also, if it's anyone, look, you got to touch your fans' hearts, and you've got to garden that relationship, and fans sense it when it's inauthentic. And so, yeah, if I think if some of the layers are now kind of falling away, and there is a lot more accessibility. Well, first of all, in Cameo, there is still that a couple of stages of buffers between,
Right.
although we are rolling out now Cameo calls, which is that's like magic. That's like FaceTiming with fans, like 2 minutes increments. But where I was going with that is, a lot of what becomes normal in music started a little bit odd. So I remember watching, we were on tour with 30 Seconds to Mars, the first time I ever saw a band charge for a meet and greet, and it was sketchy. It's like, how the hell these poor kids just bought a ticket, they bought a t-shirt. Now you're making them wait in another line to pay again just to get a picture with you. It was like, seems greedy, it seemed tacky. It seemed, all the things that people say about
Right.
Cameo or Airbnb or Uber at the time, in those early days before
They became what they were. Yeah.
Yeah. And and it's similar. So of course, what did meet and greets become but really I honestly, I think bands make as much from meet and greets as they do from the guarantees of the shows these days. So it's become a major part of the business and just standard operating procedure. Whereas, it wasn't that long ago where it would have been like, honestly, like it seems silly even to say, but good luck trying to convince your band to charge fans again to spend a minute with you. It seemed ludicrous. Of course, now you realize all of those hesitations that you had and fears around it were projection, to your point. Like, that fans, of course a fan would be happy to support you to get a genuine, authentic time and an interaction with you that matters. Of course, like, you think, what's $50 to a kid that otherwise would be annoying the hell out of your manager and your tour manager,
Right.
and your wife, and like leaving comments and DMs that would never be seen and sending emails that'll never be opened. It's like, $50, please. Like, that's a service to the fan. It really removes that anxiety for them. And then of course it's like incredible business for the artist. And so we're right now witnessing a really similar understanding and like adoption and zeitgeist culturally of Cameo, and it's right in line with what fans are starting to expect and what artists are starting to wrap their heads around and be cool with, and really what's being shaped by the newest, coolest, youngest artists that are coming up. So
I'm super, super excited to see that growth too, and see where that goes, man. And a lot of what I talk about is personal branding. And I'm of the mindset and the perception, if you really want to be friends or have an interaction with that person, build yourself up to where you're in the same room with them. Similar to you being in New York City, being around all those Fortune 500 executives, just fitting in, having that mindset shift of like, hey, I belong here. They're here, they're normal, I'm normal, I can be here too. And that right there, Matt, I know that you have to get running here in a couple of minutes, but I would love for you to talk
we go over a little bit. Yeah.
Okay, because there's this one question I think would be very, very important to a lot of people. I was actually on a phone call with somebody yesterday, and he's a copywriter who's also studying neuroscience, and he's very, big into that. And he's like, how can I leverage my personal brand to land an opportunity? And then even then, how do I get the opportunity afterwards? So I'm curious to see, how did you first get into touch with Cameo and, get onto the team? Because it was before Cameo really blew up. It was back in 2018, if what I was seeing was correct.
Yeah. I would say it really does come back around to personal brand. And the way I would describe it, I mean, practically what happens to me is, look, if I know anything, and yeah, I went to a good school, I studied graphic design, I worked at Playboy for a minute, I built websites for a minute, like I had certain, skill sets. I had a degree in filmmaking and other, I felt like I had skill sets, but really, if there's one thing that I understood, I think probably as well as anyone out there, is that relationship between my fan and me. And I know what matters to a fan. I'm a fan myself, and I know how little it takes to earn that lifelong dedication from someone, and I know how little it takes to destroy that trust too. And so so that became kind of my personal brand, so that I was asked to join a team that was doing some other startup out of Finland, and I spent some time in Helsinki. That was a little bit, I think, too early, but there's a point where there's a New York Times article about Cameo, and my buddy Marvin hit me up and said, dude, isn't this exactly what you've been talking about for the last 2 years? So it came at, and also though, when I saw it, I also jumped on it, and I just bought into it so early and so hard. There were only about 10 of us working there at the time when I came
Oh,
on.
wow.
In music, the only talent that we had at that time was like Rebecca Black and Riff Raff, and I think Tommy Lee and Soulja Boy when he wasn't in jail. And but I saw the vision. I really saw the vision. And so how it happened, just if it would be useful to anyone, your listeners, it was a commitment to my own I guess really getting in tune with what matters to you, and then what happens is, like, the universe kind of bends a little bit around you, and I think we all notice that in other people. Like, I can't tell you, I have a nephew who wants to become a pilot, right? He didn't say like, oh, I kind of want to do 20 things, it's like, no, he's like, all I want to do is be a pilot. Well, I and everyone around him just naturally kind of bend to him and to support him in that, because we like that. Because I think dream chasing is fun to just be around.
Absolutely.
And but
That's
you
awesome.
got to tell us what the dream is, or we can't help you. So I thankfully got to a point where I was, I guess, able to telegraph what my own dream was, and that is like, I want to help artists. I really want to rescue artists. I want to give artists chances that I never had. And that was the minute I really checked in and really aligned with whatever that higher purpose is for myself, is the minute that opportunities to flex that started to appear. So that would be just like my nephew who's going to become a pilot. I would invite your listeners who maybe, if that's a challenge to them, to start at the real foundation like that. And if you do, then it's not, all the noise around it seems complicated, but it isn't. Like, we want your success. Like, if you're doing something that's great and cool and makes the world a better place, and it's not just for your own selfish needs, man, bring it. Like, how can I help? And that's that's what led me here. And
There's
same thing when I have a chance to step up and roll out the red carpet for a specific artist, or maybe back in the day when I was looking, what's the criteria for an artist that I'm willing to represent. A lot of that is, it's a similar thing. Like, who wants it more, and who's clearer on what they want, and why they want it. It just makes everyone's lives smoother.
Right. Yeah. And it all aligns. Man, that is crazy, man. This has been honestly the most enjoyable conversation I've had in a long time, man. Like, this was really great. Matt, thank you for, coming on and taking your time. And I got to ask, what's next? What's next for Matt, and what's next for Cameo?
Well, thanks for saying all that. I feel like I was just rambling. I hope you can chop out some of the stammer.
Nah, I'm not chopping up anything. It's raw and unfiltered, baby. Raw and unfiltered.
What's next for me is, I'm really proud of where we are with, there's, like I said, when I started Cameo, there were 10 of us. Now there's 250 of us. When I started, there were about 1,000 talent. Now there's 45,000 talent. So what's next for me is just to continue to help, just help manifest what we all here is set out to build. Like we want to, like the music team, for example, here, like what is Cameo's role in the conversation of music, and I think we have a really big opinion there, and I think we have a really justifiably significant voice in that conversation now, and it's only going to get bigger. So what's next for me is to I want to empower artists to have massive successes and wins in their own lanes, and I want Cameo to be recognized as it is becoming. So just a really valuable partner in their journeys. I guess a real moonshot for me would be next year at the Grammys, some artist like shouts out Cameo for our role in like helping to promote the record, for giving them a team to allow them to go outside of the old system and go their own way and carve their own lane, and independently minded just like achieve their own destinies. So,
and I think that'll happen. Honestly, going back, you mentioned and touched on the law of attraction a couple of times, universe aligning and all, basically clarifying what you want, your purpose and your destination, and making that decision to go all in there. Things around you and people around you will oftentimes respect that, man. And I couldn't think of a better example of a business or anybody to bring on to talk about personal branding, because Cameo is literally built around the concept of personal brand. And that right there is a great example of why that's super important, even not even on a massive scale, but just a small scale of building up your reputation, establishing those high quality connections and relationships with other people, and seeing what you can do to provide value. There's nothing that gets me off more than seeing another person win. And that's part of the reason why I expanded the team for Mashman Ventures, because I'm like, man, if I could bring other people on board, I could have a lot more fun doing this versus being a lone wolf. And it's all about people.
Well, and credit to you, you're still one of the, look, I have conversations all day long with marketing teams, labels, managers, publicists. I'm shocked at how still uninformed some people are about the value that Cameo represents to their talent. Sometimes it's really like pulling teeth to get them to see it at first, less so these days. But to your credit, you were early on, you saw it, you leaned into it, you put your neck on the line for us, you referred talent to us. All of that just warms my heart. And that's, I think, a sign, because, that's a sign of someone who is able to, I think, parse the real value and the stuff that has legs from the stuff that doesn't. And so compliments to you on that. And yeah, finally, I would just say, to your point about personal brands, exactly. And no one's ever put it the way you just described, but you might as well, instead of saying we have 45,000 talent, we could literally say we have 45,000 personal brands.
I just completely disrupted the marketing message of Cameo.
No, but it really is. And if we were to ask what is across all the verticals, across athletes, across YouTubers, artists, what's the secret sauce to being a success on Cameo? Mm-hmm. We have some people on Cameo are earning hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. Some for whatever reason are off to slower starts. Really, if there's one universal, I'd say it is personal brand. It's like who owns their lane. So have your own opinions about riffraff, but there's only one riffraff, Yeah. And so if his fans want riffraff, they got to go to riffraff. And similarly, that, and I've had even a greater appreciation for that each day over here, even outside of music. I can see like, wow, man, I kind of judged that actor when I was sitting over here as a fan. Now that I kind of understand his business and his world and his journey and where he came from, holy, you know, this is really impressive. And I can't believe that even me choosing to hate him in high school meant that he's great at his own personal brand.
Oh man, Ben
Because one
Stiller,
person being
Nicolas
hated
Cage.
is being ignored.
Yeah, yeah. Well, man, you know, and this is the other thing about personal branding that people get, you know, they have this misconception about. They think that people are following you for what you do, and it's not about what you do, it's about who you are as an individual. I mean, you can think about Michael Jordan being, you know, arguably one of the best or the greatest basketball player of all time, but people pay attention to his work ethic, to his personality. They attach on to who he is and what he represents. And that's the same thing with the people who are making, I guarantee this actually, and I'm confident in saying this, that the people who are making the hundreds of thousands of dollars on Cameo are the ones that are the most connected with their fans and the most, I guess you could probably say, controversial or biggest personalities. And the ones who are making the least are the ones who not necessarily have the smallest numbers, but are the ones that have the least connection, and the ones that are the most distant, that have no point of communication with anybody. And that right there is the differentiating factor.
Yeah, I'll give you a really quick example that proves that, and really illustrates that contrast. So we had two big artists join Cameo. It's about a year ago. One of them a little more hesitant, both with big personal brands, both household names, both prestige talent. And when you get to that level, speaking of personal brand, your team's job becomes to protect your personal brand. So they see any new chance that, you know, a new platform that they see, or anything that's introduced to the mix that's already crushing, by the way, you know, where if you have a machine rolling, you got the locomotive of your personal brand just rolling, and, you know, money's coming in from multiple sources, and you know, why take a chance on anything? You can only damage your brand. So you would think, you know, but what was really beautiful takeaway for me through this example is that you had, for all intents and purposes, two almost identical personal brands. Both were at the top of their game in a very specific lane. One was very reserved, very kind of defensive, bare minimum, kind of leaned out, and came on and set a really high price because they were worried about the optics of what their value would be ultimately. We're asking, you know, it was just a lot of questions around just covering, kind of like just circling wagons, like fortifying themselves, making sure that this was as low a risk
What's in it for me
as can be. How can we make the most money, and how can we make the most money without damaging our personal brand? Now, I think that's the wrong question to ask, because the other talent that came out around the same time with as much to lose, their questions were, how can we make the fans happier? How can what should I do? What's fun that we can do here? What's something that no one else has done yet? Hey, can we try this? Can we try this? Can we you know, and they came with a sense of sort of curiosity, and wonder and heart and humor. And, you know, zoom out today, one of those talents has almost cleared $1 million and had a blast, and has seen their business overall bump from the engagement that they're having on Cameo. And the other, pretty much, you know, they made, you know, they earned a good amount in the first, on their launch, and then kind of took off and, you know, pulled up stakes and rolled out. And I think that's a really cool, just it's a cool example of how those approaches are to your personal brand are important, because I understand when it's taken you 30 years to build something, and there's no urgent reason to take a risk on anything. I could definitely see the temptation to operate from a place of fear, but it ultimately, the irony is it's not good business to do that. And I think that was the takeaway from that. So I always try to encourage any new talent as they come on to Cameo to trust us, have fun, lean into it. And you know, what you get in is what you get out. Otherwise, it really becomes like a lot of things in life, a success or failure on Cameo, it can be self-fulfilling either way, but it starts with the sort of attitude and energy of the talent.
Damn. Mic drop. Well, Matt, brother, thank you again for coming on. Now, where can people find you? Where can people find Cameo? And go and wrap this up.
Yeah, Instagram at Matt Devine's Life. There's only one T in Matt, so it's MattDevine. So Matt Devine's Life. And yeah, anyone's welcome to email me for anything Cameo related, divine@cameo.com, or otherwise go through you. Any artists out there that are curious to learn more about Cameo, hit me up anytime. Happy to talk. Any teams out there, marketing teams, managers, labels, publicists, anyone wants to learn more about what we can do for the artists that they represent, their roster, hit me up. Yeah, always just excited to kind of spread the word and help make sure that everyone, you know, it takes 2 minutes to get artists on the Cameo, and you know, I like to roll out the red carpet. I like to step up. I would like to do whatever we can to celebrate when they come on, and leverage the visibility that we have right now, and our socials and our PR and marketing to really just show the love to our Cameo, and try to just step up as a great partner in any way that we can. So
create that culture.
Yeah, absolutely. And to you, brother, thanks for your enthusiasm, and for reaching out and being early and being a fan and being cool. And yeah, anything I can ever do for you, let me know.
Absolutely, brother. And I have some new people that I'm going to be introducing to the app. This goes to anybody listening. Reach out to me. I can go ahead and see about getting you hooked up with some amazing people, including Matt, and getting you on Cameo. So let me know. And without further ado, be on the lookout for a new podcast episode every single Monday, and an interview every single Friday with some really, really interesting and valuable guests. So much love.
Awesome.